let's kick this off. So as you can see on the screen, today is all about why cybersecurity needs to be top of mind for bookkeepers and accountants. We have Chris here, so feel free to jump to the next one. I'll give a rundown of the agenda, and then I'll let you introduce yourself. But the flow of today's webinar will introduce cybersecurity. I know everybody that has joined has heard of this term, but even myself, sometimes there's so much talk about different types of security. So we'll dive into what is actually cybersecurity and why it's so important in today's time with all the different remote workforce, cloud, AI going on. We'll talk about trends and challenges, how to implement efficient practices in supporting technologies. How can technology like Keeper help when it comes to cybersecurity? And then we'll wrap up with best practices, how to be proactive. And Chris will share how him and his team can help you all out in the accounting and bookkeeping industry. And then we'll note questions along the way and save time at the end for any questions that you have. So that's what we have in store for today. Really excited to kick this off. Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. All right. My name is Chris Burns. I have a company in Michigan. It's called Techie Gurus. We're rebranding to your cyber team, so you'll see that stuff a lot. I have a CISSP. This is nerd talk for Certified Information System Security Professional. It's a cybersecurity cert. It's one of the most well-known in the industry and in the world, quite frankly. I love technology way too much. Ask my wife. She will tell you that I am addicted to technology way too much, but it does bring perks to be in the house. So we have everything wireless. She has the easiest setup in the world, and I'm in-house tech support. So there's that. I speak fluid sarcasm. If you know me, I'm not mean. I'm a nice person, but I am sarcastic with people, and I'm also an Eagle Scout. Be prepared was something that I grew up with, and it's something that I've carried throughout my entire career. And it's very important to me that we're always prepared. Find me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. I post stuff all the time. Less recently, but I'm picking that back up. I talk about things that are happening out there. If you've seen an attack, I usually will have a video about it, breaking it down for like a business owner perspective or an executive, that they can actually take those insights and actually try to go back in your business and implement them. So I'm really excited to be here, and I appreciate Keeper inviting me on this. So let's get into introduction to cybersecurity. We should have a poll. Also, I can't believe the hot dog as a sandwich is 83%. There we go. Have you ever experienced a security incident? We just want to know a yes or no. Just give it a second, and if you guys could fill that in, that'd be great. Okay. Thank you for your honesty. A lot of people don't want to admit this, so being at 71% right now, that's a big deal. You can keep filling out that poll, but why should you prioritize cybersecurity in your business? One of the things we look at over time, and these two pictures actually represent the biggest jump in safety. Cars 40, 50 years ago, you could see a car with that many kids in the back of it. Is it safe? The answer is no. In an accident, what would happen? It'd be catastrophic. But as we go forward, we've adopted new technologies to keep us safer in a car. We've added anti-lock brakes, seat belts, airbags, crumple zones, side curtain airbags pretty much everywhere else in the car, so you're basically in a big pillow when you get in an accident. And we have to treat cybersecurity like that in a firm. Your IT from 20 years ago needs to mature to what it is today. And a lot of that is tied to cybersecurity and practices in your business. you have really critical information that hackers want. The information you have is really valuable for them. They can basically turn around and sell it, or they can sell access into your company, and they can use that to leverage it for more money. At the end of the day, most of these people, they want money. So your number one priority is to know what is sensitive in your business and what things are you doing to protect it. You want to avoid fines. You don't want to pay government fines. You don't want to pay like any kind of, you don't want to have to pay out for insurance. A lot of insurance claims, even if you do have coverage for cyber insurance, you're still going to have to pay a deductible. You don't have to do that. And a lot of times, the things that we do today are cheaper and better than if you don't do anything and you just have a cyber attack. And the biggest thing about this is preserving trust with our customers and our reputation. If you're small, even if you're medium size, you can't absorb the reputation hit and the trust and loss of trust like a big corporation can. So you see what happened to auto dealers over the past 2.5, 3 weeks. CDK Global was a dealer management system that they used to run their entire dealership. It affected more than half the dealers in the United States, and CDK had a cyber attack. And they shut down dealers. Dealers had to go back to paper and manual processes. Right now, they're saying that economic impact to dealers is well over $1 billion. CDK will probably survive that because they have private equity backing them. But for a small company, that's almost a death knell for that company. So this is why cybersecurity is probably the number one thing that you should think about, because it's all about your customers and it's all about protecting your business as well. So the state of cybersecurity is interesting to me. Accountants and bookkeepers, because of the data you have, you are a primary target for a lot of hacking groups. And the threat landscape is vast. It changes all the time. The way that people attack you, the people that are attacking you, it changes constantly in the back end. And it's not up to you to keep track of that. It's on third parties to help keep track of that. The compliance struggles that we see today with insurance. Insurance is turning into probably the number one compliance organization in the world, faster than the government, because the government doesn't change that often. But every single year, more and more compliance, more and more things are put down on you that you need to get the insurance that you need to protect your business, to transfer that risk from you to the insurance company in the event that you do have an attack. And then we bring in regulations like FTC safeguards. If you're dealing with personal information, specifically if you're doing taxes, FTC safeguards is critical for you to know about. There's 9 elements that you need to have in your business. If you're not doing that and you've got your PTIN, you already agreed that you were following it. It's a checkbox when you go to renew that. Did you know that? If not, that's something that you need to kind of look into. But I want to talk about this company, Stresser Associates. They're a bookkeeping and accounting firm in Atlanta, Georgia. And in November 2022, they had a bad day. They were hacked by a group that was called ELF-V or Black Hat. This is the same group that actually hacked MGM and Caesars. That was last year. They no longer exist, but I'll get to that in a second. But they had access to this company for 6 days. So what did they do? They stole all their data. Then they did something that you don't see every day. They stood up a new website on the clear web, so you could go to it from Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Opera, if that's your thing. And if you look at the second picture, that was what was up. So when you see admin shares, audits, tax returns from customers, employee share, driver's license, passports, yep, that was all data that you could just download. Anybody could. It took them until January of 2024 to post the breach notification on their website. So if you're doing business with a company and they knew they were hacked in November 2022 and they don't post about it until January of 2024, how do you feel? How would your customers feel if that was you and they were doing business with you? This happens more often than you ever will notice because private companies don't have to report this. But I will tell you, if you end up on one of these websites, it's public information and people will know about it. So what is cybersecurity really? There's 2 things we can talk about. We can talk about information security and cybersecurity. Information security is all about protecting your data, whether it's digital or analog. Cybersecurity is protecting everything. Your data, your devices, access to your cloud applications. It's all encompassing for that. And that is such a big job. It's a big job for anybody to have to manage, to have to take care of, to understand, to learn. Much like what you do with bookkeeping and accounting, this is something that a professional has to keep up with all the time. It changes all the time. And one of the things we want to talk about is the CIA triad. And this is paramount to security in general. It's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality is somebody should only see the data they're allowed to see. Integrity is the data isn't modified, unintentionally or intentionally by somebody that shouldn't. And availability is just available to use. A good example of an attack that would compromise all three of these would be ransomware. You've probably seen it. Somebody gets encrypted, and then they get hit with a double ransom. They get hit with all of their stuff is encrypted. They can't access their data. Okay, so that ruins the availability of it. The data's been modified and encrypted, so that the integrity is gone. And the confidentiality is gone because they stole all the data before they did all that. And then they hit them with a ransom for that confidentiality part. They're like, okay, well, to get your data back, pay this ransom. But if you don't want us to post your data, well, you got to pay this ransom. That's not as common as what people make it think, but that is an example of an attack that would violate all those. And cybersecurity is all about looking at all your devices, your cloud applications, your credentials, so your logins and passwords, and trying to help you defend against that attack or that information getting leaked so somebody can attack you. And it is so critically important. And one of the questions that I don't think we put up, but we were going to ask, are you too small to be attacked? And I put an image up here about 20 minutes before we started, and it shows a small healthcare facility. This is on a dark web forum that was posted. They have 12 computers. And this hacking group, this hacker has access to their entire network and is selling access to somebody else. This is called an initial access broker. This happens more than you would believe for a company with 12 computers. You'll see this for big companies too, but this is something that affects everybody. So what do we do? What kind of trends and challenges do we have in this world? And technology is probably the biggest thing. We've seen a digital transformation. Everything is in the cloud. Everything is in software. You don't have to do manual paperwork very much anymore. If you're doing taxes, you're e-filing. Hopefully you're not mailing it. If you are, that's fine too. But it creates a challenge for companies. It creates a cybersecurity challenge. How do we keep the data safe? We have to keep the data safe because we don't want people to see it that shouldn't see it. We don't want people to have access that shouldn't have access. And then when we make a choice to move all of our stuff to the cloud, we still have to extend that thought process to the cloud. So how do we make sure that when we use QuickBooks Online, that only the people that should have access to it have access to it? When we use Keeper, how do we make sure that people only have access to the clients they should have access to? That's the thought process. When we put data in Dropbox or Microsoft SharePoint or some other file sharing, how do we protect that data from not getting in the hands of people that shouldn't have access to it? Those are the challenges. Those are the trends. It is, if you get your Microsoft or Google account stolen and accessed, what can somebody get access to? Think about that. If all your data is in Microsoft or all your data is in Google and they have access to that, that could be your world. So we gotta understand that. We gotta be monitoring for that. We gotta be able to detect that. Artificial intelligence is fun. Artificial intelligence is going to change the way that data is analyzed forever. But we got to be careful. How do we implement AI in our company and not expose data? Do you take your customer's data and put it into artificial intelligence for analyzing it? Maybe. But you probably should have a policy in your company that says, hey, this is how we use AI in our company, and make sure that you have strict controls around it, that people don't just go out and put customer information in ChatGPT or some other AI, a large language model AI, and all of a sudden the data that you had that you thought was private is now publicly used to train AI models. That's a big deal. And the last thing is remote workforce. We've seen this trend where it's hard to find employees, but you can find employees remotely either inside the United States or outside the United States. If you go outside the United States, how do you protect the data? How do you protect your company? You have to think about far beyond cybersecurity. What about the legal ramifications of it? Because to your customer, you're responsible and accountable for keeping their data safe. When you make a choice to hire somebody outside the country, what are you doing to make sure that you're keeping up your end of the bargain? That's where cybersecurity and that's where doing the right things comes into play. It's a huge thing that we have to talk about. I'm going to do this poll now because I just saw it. See, you put it up there too late because now everybody's answering no. Nobody answered yes. That's not what I see when I talk to people. Everybody's like, oh, we're too small to be hacked. Oh, I love it. So what makes you vulnerable to a cyber attack? I will say this, for most attacks today, phishing is the number one thing that happens. It's the number one way that a threat actor or hacker will get access to your company. And it'll be because they targeted an email. Maybe it came from a vendor. Maybe a vendor of yours got hacked and sent out an email that had like a phishing link in it and you clicked on it and something happened, right? So we see phishing as a big problem. From small companies to large companies, it doesn't really matter because phishing can lead to malware and ransomware. So malware being pretty much anything that can damage your computer. It could lead to a remote access Trojan, which is just somebody having remote access in your computer where they can watch your webcam, listen to your microphone, screenshot everything that you're doing, steal the credentials you're typing in. That's real, something that's not that difficult to do. It could be ransomware. Maybe they say, you know what, we deploy the remote access Trojan first, and then we hit with ransomware after we steal a bunch of stuff. That's reality. That can be done through phishing. It can also be done from just going to a website that you shouldn't have went to. We've seen something called malvertising. It's not on here. They will buy legitimate advertising on Google in these advertising spaces and put up links that are malware. So if you are on there and you see like a link to like a popular product or something like that, and you click on it, it may not be from the company you think it is. It could be leading you down a path of malware. This is the way it's been the last few years. And the big thing that we see is credential theft. And that's where they're stealing your username and password, but it gets better. In man-in-the-middle attack, they can steal your multi-factor authentication as well. If you click on a link, and we've demonstrated this in a live event, where you can serve up a page that looks like it's a Microsoft login or looks like it's a Google login. It's actually hosted on a different website, and it's just showing you the login screen. You click on it, you put your credentials in, so your username, your password, you hit submit, you get the multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication prompt, you accept it, and then you get logged in. The thing about this is you are on a different server when you logged in. What happens in a login is you get something back called a session token that says, hey, this person's username and password was correct. They provided multi-factor authentication. Here's a token to allow you to log in. The problem was the hacker just stole your token. So now they log in while you're logged in. Then they add another level of multi-factor authentication so they can keep persistence in your account. So, and because they have your password, if you don't know that happened, even if they go to another computer, they can just log in with it. We had a customer hit by this yesterday. It was a large manufacturing firm. There was a deal going down between 4 or 5 companies, and one of the companies in the deal, not our customer, was breached. They had a security incident. They had a hacker group inside of it was either CFO's or CEO's email, and they were actively manipulating emails based on that, and they sent out a link from Microsoft SharePoint, which does not get flagged as a bad link because it was coming from this company, and it redirected them to a website to open this document, and it had prompted them, said, hey, look, you just got to log in to view this, which is common for file sharing. They're like, and so the CEO of the company that we have and their lead salesperson, their sales manager, both clicked on the link, tried to open the document, put their credentials in, did their multi-factor authentication, and got their credentials stolen. We have robust cybersecurity practices in place with them. We saw the login from another country. Actually, no, it was from the United States. It was a different part of the United States. And because of what we're doing, we stopped that attack in less than 5 minutes. We had them reset and done within 5 minutes. And then we went into investigation mode with the other companies to try to figure out who it was. I mean, we knew who it was that sent it, but who else like clicked on the link and submitted their credentials, because they had to get their stuff reset too. This is happening more and more. We see this at larger companies, but we also see it at smaller companies, because if they can get access in, they can, it's a free-for-all. They can get access to whatever they want. And if they can act as you and actively send to your customers, tricking them into doing links and transferring money, that becomes a big problem. So I don't mean to scare you, but this is the world that I live in, and unfortunately, sometimes it's a scary place. So what can we do to reduce threats? This is the big deal here for everybody on this webinar. It's like, what can we do? I want you to identify and document every digital asset you have. And when I say digital asset, I mean device. So your laptops, your desktops, your phones that have access to your data, but also where's your data stored? All your software as a service applications, all your software, all that's digital assets. You should have a spreadsheet that has all of this in there. And then when it goes down to data, who has access in the company? Do you use groups in your company to say, have access to certain files? And then you just put people, when you hire them, into a group instead of manually assigning different people to it. I've seen it go both ways. So you want to identify all those assets. You want to train your employees. It's so critical. And when I say training and awareness, it's two different things. Training is just like common training on good cybersecurity practices. Awareness is where you're getting active training on things that are happening right now. So example would be, if we're seeing a specific attack that's happening against bookkeepers and accountants, we would do an awareness training that says, hey, we're going to send this video out. Watch this because this is important. And it's specifically around that attack. And those happen more often than you'll see just regular training videos. Training videos get kind of old and stale. We've all seen it. But awareness videos are really about what's happening now. And then please implement multi-factor authentication everywhere. Emails especially, but everywhere. Yes, it can be stolen. It's still a very sophisticated attack. You still should have it. And then my shirt. Oh, you switched to me. So you just, sorry, camera switched on me, but that's fine. You should have it, but you want to make sure that it's implemented where it can be. Regular software updates and patching, this is something that people miss. A lot of vulnerabilities in the way that hackers can exploit things are just because things aren't patched. Windows, Mac, your firewall if you have one, your network equipment if you have one, your access points, all need to be patched regularly. If you're not doing that today, something to take from this and do that. You also want to make sure that you're implementing advanced security at the email level and at the endpoint. So whatever device you're using to access the email, if you can put advanced security on there, you definitely should. And the reason for that is because if it gets missed for whatever reason at the email level, at least you have some protection at the client level. It's called defense in depth. It's something that we do. We also layer in something else that's a little more advanced, where we put a plugin in your browser as well that will look at the link after you click on it. So it could come from email. Maybe it passes email filter. It gets down to your computer. It's fine. You click on it, it tries to open up in Chrome, and then maybe it gets flagged. But it's just a different layer that we can do that we can stop these sort of attacks. And then please, if you don't have an incident response plan, please just make a simple one. If you have a security incident, you do not want emotions to run wild. You want a plan that you can be almost checklist-like, that you can say, okay, here's who I call. Here's my lawyer's number. Here's my insurance broker's number. Here's my IT. Here's my cybersecurity company's number. What communication plan are we going to have if we have to communicate out to our customers? Do we have that plan yet? We probably should have a plan, or at least a rough draft of a plan. Is there any agency that we have to contact to say, hey, we've had a breach of over 500 records, and maybe in your state it's required that you actually submit that to the state within a certain amount of time? All this stuff that you need to know needs to go in the incident response plan. So sometimes you're going to be talking to an IT company to help you with this, along with a cybersecurity company, maybe a consultant, and maybe even a lawyer, because some of this is going to be legal. So you're going to have to talk maybe to an attorney about what you really need in this. And then last one is just verify your vendors. Vendor cybersecurity practice is a big deal. Using reputable vendors and vendors that actually care about your security is really critical. If they have bad security practices, remember this. The customer trusted you to do the right thing. It is your responsibility to do the right thing with the vendors that you choose and where you put their data. Because in the event of an incident, let's say you chose just a shoddy vendor of some sort. Maybe it's like not a very popular one, and they're just cheaper than everybody else, but they don't do cybersecurity very well, and that data gets breached. That's your responsibility. You're accountable for that. Your customer's coming to you; they're not coming to the vendor. Now, maybe you have some legal recourse to the vendor, but first and foremost, it's coming to you first. You don't want that. That's a bad day. Choose your vendors wisely. And then we have some best practices. I think we have a poll for this too.
It's launched.
There we go. All right. Do you have a document cybersecurity strategy? If you say no, it's okay. It's probably the most common thing I see. I want to meet the 10%. Not anymore. That's 14. I'll let that go for a second. You guys are doing pretty good. I usually see upwards of 90% for people that don't have document cybersecurity strategy. All right, best practices. We want to build a cybersecurity program, and it's built around a framework. There's a couple of frameworks out there that don't cost money, it just costs time. One of them is NIST. It's put out by the government. This is NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or CSF 2.0. And I'm going to run through this real quick. There's another one called CIS version 8. You probably need somebody to help you implement this, but CIS is a little bit more prescriptive. So it will tell you exactly what to do. NIST is not quite as prescriptive, but this image is more important than which framework you go with. The idea is the same between both of them. And a lot of frameworks that are used around the world to protect companies come based off of NIST. NIST is the bedrock one, and then they may expand out from there. So I'll run through this real quick. Identify the assets that you need to protect. This is kind of what I talked about before. Know what you need to protect, because if you don't know what you need to protect, you're just going to miss things. And by protect, we mean when we move on to protect, we mean put in things like firewalls, antivirus, the technical stuff that you need to do to protect access and make sure that the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data is secured. But guess what? Protections fail. Right? If you have a house and you have a fence, it might not stop somebody from jumping in your backyard. Okay, well, if they jump in your backyard, what do they have to go through next? Maybe they go through the doors or the windows. Does that stop them? Probably not. Okay, so now how do you know that they've got past your fence, through your door and windows into your house? A lot of people have an alarm system. That's the same thing here. It's a detection mechanism. Detection is probably the single most important thing you can have, even more so than protection, because protections fail. But if you can't detect that something has failed, you'll never know, so you can't respond to it. So we spend a lot of time in the detection phase, so we can, like from the story I just told from yesterday, we detected that their login was being used someplace else that was impossible to be used. So the customer was in Michigan, they logged in from Arizona. That's impossible. You can't make it from Michigan to Arizona, at least as far as I'm aware, in like 20 minutes. Now, maybe somebody has some faster travel than I know of, but like that's not possible. And then that gets triggered. That detection is really cool. It's really important. It's really cool because it allows us to respond. So our response time of fixing that quick really stopped them, because if we didn't have the detection, we didn't know, imagine how bad that could have been. I don't even know the size of the deal, but when you have like 5 companies involved, I got to imagine that was a pretty big deal. And it could have been in the multi-millions of dollars. So we were able to respond appropriately. But guess what? Sometimes things just fail. you have protection, you have response or detection, and then you get to response part. And you know what? Maybe something got encrypted. Maybe something got deleted that shouldn't have been. Okay, well, now you move on to recover. So how do we recover? How do we recover the business? This is more technologically driven, but think about it from your business standpoint. If something that you use every single day to do your business is down and unavailable, how do you continue to operate? How do you get back up on your feet? So that's where recovery comes in. And then the new one for NIST CSF 2.0 is the govern part. We need to govern this. This is policies and procedures. It's the really boring stuff that nobody wants to do. That's really important. It's really important to document all this stuff. When I say document your assets, that's part of governance. It's part of identify, but it's also part of governance because you're going to put policies and procedures in place. It's really boring, but it's the boring stuff that really helps you develop this program. It helps keep your business safe and helps you understand what you need to do next. And Keeper is here to help too. One of the reasons I agreed to do this is because I looked at the security and I talked a lot with Josh and the team about what they're doing to help you guys. And the client portal thing, it is so critical. Keeping customers from sending critical information through email. Oh, please do a client portal. It will just save you. It's a way more secure way to do it. It's awesome. They really do roles and permissions to basically say, hey, maybe your employee only needs access to a couple of customers. Like that's all they should have access to. Least privilege is really important in security. People should only have access to the things they need to do their job, period. No more, no less. So giving them too much access to things is just asking for a problem. And maybe they don't do anything. Maybe you've had 5 employees and nobody's ever done anything bad, but that 6th employee could violate that. So least privilege is important. In the cloud, it's really important. Small companies, even medium-sized companies, cloud is available all the time. Being based off AWS, being Amazon. I mean, Amazon's availability is amazing. Microsoft's availability is amazing if you're using Microsoft for whatever cloud. It's amazing. It's something that you can't really duplicate on site, so that gives you that availability. So when you go back to the triad, availability is so critical. That gives you availability. And then their security is awesome. They got their SOC 2. They validated the way that they do things, the procedures and policies, but they're going a little bit further, and they're actually hiring companies to penetration test their APIs and their software. And a penetration test is critical. That means a third party is acting like a hacker, and they're trying to hack them. They're trying to find those vulnerabilities that hackers use to get in. And by being proactive about that and hiring a company to do that, the chances that somebody's going to be able to do that is the risk is significantly less than it would have been without. Because eventually they're going to find something, and then Keeper will go back and their programmers will go back and fix it. That's the software life cycle that people have to, unfortunately, live through. So what's next? And I think we have a poll for this too.
Yep. I am launching that, Chris, for you.
Thanks. And when I say action, I mean actually take something from this and actually implement it. Even if it's go back and document everything that you have and who has access to it, that is a huge step. That is a big win. If I go to a prospect and they have all their data documented and they know where their assets are, first of all, I might give them a hug, which might get me kicked out, but I would be so ecstatic, you have no idea. It's something that nobody does, but everybody needs to do. Oh, I love your guys' enthusiasm. People that are voting. All right. So what's next? If you go to yourcyberteam.com, I apparently didn't save my QR code. I had a QR code on here, but you could book a therapy or strategy session with me. There are some Easter eggs on there, so if you scroll along, one of them is called "Thanks for Doom Scrolling," and you can still book it. I'll have a special gift for you. Just make sure to mention that you're on this webinar, and I'll have a special gift for you. But I'm not going to tell you because that just ruins the surprise.
Thanks for doing this, Chris.
Yeah.
Really informative. I think as a CPA myself, I think a lot of times we forget how important the information is that we're dealing with. Worked at a Big Four. I don't even know when I started if they really talked in depth about cybersecurity the way they probably should have. And I know this was quite a few years ago, but I do think this is a topic that everybody should be thinking about and educating their team on, especially if you have bookkeepers. So
and seek out an expert, even if it's not me, if it's not my team. Just seek out an expert, somebody who knows what they're doing, somebody that specializes in it, because it really, what you do is so critical for people, for their businesses and things like that. When I say the bookkeeping and accounting, it's really critical for them. You don't have time to learn this stuff. You don't have time to keep on top of this. Have you seen the amount of time that we spend researching, looking at like just stuff that probably nobody should look at, like just trying to keep up with trends and like keep up with like what's going on? It's a lot. It's a lot for a team to do. It's a lot of like time and effort and things like that. So,
Chris, I got a couple questions that came in from Amanda. Amanda, thanks for asking them. I'm gonna start them live. So you should see them pop up on the screen.
Oh, cool. Yep. What do you recommend for setting up MFA on email? Okay, cool. Whether you use Google or whether you use Microsoft, both of them have built-in multi-factor authentication you can just turn on. It really comes down to configuring the email properly. You can force it for everybody in the company. They both have documentation on how to do it, but even at the low end versions of both, you should be able to force it on for everybody. So the next time they log in, they should get the prompt where they use it. For Google, you're going to use Google Authenticator. Microsoft has their own authenticator that you can use, but technically you can use Google as well.
A couple other questions. I'm going to continue to throw them on the screen for you, Chris.
Yeah.
Can you talk about VPNs? Is this a good idea?
I love VPNs. VPNs are so overblown and such a waste of time. Like, fun fact, the top like 7 VPNs are all owned by one company. So all that advertisement you see is all just one company just selling different brands. They bought up so many of them. The thing about VPNs is they used to be useful. And the only thing they're useful for now is privacy. They're not useful for keeping you safe. The reason is everything you go to today should be encrypted. So when you go to Facebook, when you join this webinar, when you go to your bank, it's all encrypted. VPNs can leak data. They lie. They say, hey, we don't log things. They just lie. There's something different, though, that uses a VPN technology. It's called SASE, S-A-S-E, and it's the Secure Access Service Edge. And the cool thing about that is it's always on. It's protecting you. It's scanning for threats as well. But you can leverage that to limit access to things like, say, your email. You could say, the only way I can get into my email is I have to be coming from this. And that way, if you did give up your credentials, they couldn't access because they wouldn't be on the same network as you technically. That's the new way to do things. I would get away. I think VPNs are just overrated at this point.
Here's another one, Chris. How are Google Drive and HubDoc, if you know specifically? But I think the larger question, and we touched on this a little bit, is like, how do we determine what are safe platforms to use?
So one of the things you want to look for when you're looking for someplace to use for like storing documents and things like that is look at their security. I mean, do they encrypt things when they're stored? And which is good. The problem is when something's open, it's not encrypted. So you want to make sure that multi-factor authentication is supported. Obviously, Google does. I don't know HubDoc off the top of my head, but I'm assuming they have it because they should. And ask them, specifically for documents, ask them what the recovery looks like. So let's say somebody got in and deleted all of the documents. Can they recover it? Because that's a big one. So I would ask that. I just don't know on HubDoc. What you want to do for a vendor, most vendors that are reputable will have something about cybersecurity on their website, and you can kind of go read that. Look for things like SOC 2. Look for things like, hey, we do security testing. Could be called penetration testing, vulnerability assessments, things like that. And then if you have a deeper question, you could simply ask them, and then find somebody that knows what they're talking about, like somebody that you can trust, a trusted advisor, and just have them jump on a call with you. Have them talk to them.
Thanks, Chris. A couple other specific questions. I don't know if you know anything about Bitwarden, if you ever heard of this.
I don't have a problem with Bitwarden. It's password manager. Password managers are great. I love password managers. I think everybody should use one. What's funny is there's a password manager called Keeper that you could use. That they can get really confused if you're using Keeper app. Password manager is really good. Again, the thing you want to keep in mind with password manager is the password that you use to protect it needs to be long, probably 15, 16 characters. Complexity is overrated. Length is key. And then you want to make sure you protect it with multi-factor authentication. Again, because if you give somebody access to all your passwords, it becomes a bigger problem. So, if you want to do Bitwarden, Keeper, 1Password, LastPass has got a bad rap, but they've done a lot of security changes too. So, follow best practices with that and you should be good.
And then, Chris, I know we spoke about our backups and how we're constantly backing up, but Regina asked, what about a vendor like Rewind that backs up data? I don't know if you're familiar with them, but
are they the ones that, I'm trying to remember if they do QuickBooks or if they do.
But I think in general, it's a great question to know and something that I know our developers do a great job on.
Oh, these guys support Shopify and stuff. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I love this. It was QuickBooks Online where I first saw them. Okay. Yeah, we use what I don't see on Rewind is I don't see them talking about backing up like Google or Microsoft. But they do have some very specific backups that a lot of other places don't. So that's interesting. Yeah, I think they're good. I think anything that can back up your data from a third-party vendor and give you the ability to restore it if you need to is critical. Like we back up Microsoft and Google for people. We can do some other things too. I think we can back up Salesforce, QuickBooks Online, stuff like that. I can't do Shopify, so that's not really my wheelhouse, but it looks like a good product. I just have to dig into it a little bit more. But yeah, anytime you can back up data from a vendor and there's an integration piece to it that allows you to easily do it and verify it and get notifications, and you can even do a test restore, perfect. Definitely do that.
Awesome, Chris. Well, I know this was scheduled for, I think, 45 minutes. We're right on the nose. So really appreciate you hopping on. Yeah. I think there's room for more webinars on this topic, especially surrounding, Keeper and just choosing the right vendors. And we can get into depth and get into more detail. And it looks like people might want to know about that, especially with remote teams. One last question. We'll let everybody go. I'll let you answer this, and then we'll go on with our day.
I do have a way to this. So one of the ways that we've done this for people using remote teams, let's say in India or the Philippines, we have a way of limiting access to certain things. And I've talked to the people at Keeper about this too, and it's something that's ongoing. But we can limit. May internet go away?
I can still hear you, Chris.
Okay, good. The thing said reconnected event. If you can still hear me good. Anyway, we can do a virtual desktop situation in a foreign country. We use Microsoft for that, but let's say Philippines, India. Philippines is good. We can do like Hong Kong, and we can limit access to certain things only from that environment. So they can use their devices and they can connect to it, but we would limit as many of your applications to only be able to come from that environment for those users. And that really reduces your risk. Because even if they try from their local device, their personal device to access it, they wouldn't be able to. And we can put restrictions that they can't copy and paste, they can't download files, they can't do anything outside of that environment, and it really keeps you safe. It's an investment, but when you look at what you're trying to do and what you're trying to protect, it's an investment you have to consider.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Chris.
Yeah.
We will circulate this slide. We'll have an email that goes out in 24 hours that will contain some additional information in case you missed it. But thanks again for everyone joining. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Thank you again for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Very informative. All right. Take care and talk soon.
Thanks, guys.